I don't know how I missed that one. Like usually, usually I catch all of it, and I don't know how I missed that one. So that to me is completely funny. Like I really like okay. Um, so the report the report I sent to you this morning was the DOJ report that was coming out of Louisville, St. Louis, in Kansas, and the report that the DOJ released in them after the Breonna Taylor. But before we jump into that, I kind of want to give the listeners a rewind to remember when DOJ went in when they did their report on what happened in Ferguson, right? Remember, they went in and they were talking about how corrupt the police were, how they were doing unnecessary stops, and the main representation of that report that came out of Ferguson was that the Ferguson citizens were being over policed because the police force was being used as a taxation force, right? That they were having budgetary shortfalls in City Hall, and that was making them give quotas to the police officers that were causing more interactions that were actually necessary. So that was the report that came out about Ferguson, and I think what came out about Milwaukee as well, because those were the three cities that
Yep.
were in that first set of riots. It was Ferguson, Baltimore, and Milwaukee. And they came out with a report about Milwaukee with the exact same thing. The police were using excessive force. They were being used as a taxation force. They were being pushed into interactions with their citizens. Then came basically the DOJ report out of Baltimore, which was accompanied by the taking down of the Baltimore Gun Task Force, because they were doing like what you said. They were doing the run up and jump outs. They were chasing down kids with backpacks on to search them. They were planting drugs and guns in vehicles. They would literally ride around with guns and drug packs to plant on people, and it was so bad that they ended up letting 200 close to 200 people out, and the judge actually came down off of the bench and actually had to apologize to the citizens for how they had been treated after everything had been discovered. So now the report comes out about Louisville Metro Police Department. They use excessive force, including unjustified neck restraints and the unreasonable use of police dogs and tasers. Basically, with the police dogs, they were instructing the police dogs to bite people. And then when the people were subdued, or if they weren't resisting at all, they would instruct the dogs to maintain the pressure. So people were actually getting bit and tortured by the dog when they are supposed to bite and release when the suspect is no longer a threat, but they weren't doing that. They conduct searches based on invalid warrants, meaning they don't do their due diligence, they don't do their due justice, they don't make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and that they are serving faithful warrants. They unlawfully execute search warrants without knocking and announcing. That's where you get the no-knock warrants from now, which means they are not announcing themselves. They are walking into people's apartment. If those people are legal, gun-abiding citizens, and they react to this, police barging in unannounced, then those people are then held liable for anything that went wrong. They say they unlawfully stops, searches, detains, and arrests people during street enforcement activities, including traffic and pedestrian stops. That's the jump outs. Unlawfully discriminates against black people in its enforcement activities, violates the rights of people engaged in protected speech critical of police and how they crack down on the protesters. And they discriminate against people with behavioral health disabilities while responding to them in crisis. And this is not just all. And you can go and you can look up the entire report. It's a 90-page report detailing it. And so it becomes just another assessment of a localized police force, and how a lot of the citizens that are complaining about their treatment under these police forces, if the DOJ is allowed to actually go in, they find in majority of every single one of these cases that there is in fact corruption within the local police department.
Like I said, I read this, and this 90-page report is almost no different than the report that we received from the DOJ about the Minneapolis Police Department. One of the things you brought up, you was talking about, was no-knock warrants. Give you another somebody to look up. His name is Amir Locke. Amir Locke was in his cousin's apartment when they did a no-knock warrant. The kid got up. He had a right to have a firearm. He got up. When they kicked the couch, startled him. He gets up with a gun. They shoot and kill him. Here's the thing about this, Sonny. The mayor here in Minneapolis had said that we have banned no-knock warrants. There's not going to be a no-knock warrant in Minneapolis, correct? So the city of St. Paul wanted to find this young man's family member, and they will not do no-knock warrants. So they come over to Minneapolis because they know Minneapolis Police Department are reckless, and they'll do whatever. They execute a no-knock warrant on this young man, and they end up killing him. And that's where we stand with this. I haven't really heard too much more about it. But the man, I feel, and they want to go after the cop who shot this young man. The cop was doing his job. He had a job to do at the end of the day, whether we look at it that way or not. But the man who signed this piece of paper, who gave the okay for those cops to go kick that young man's door down, the man who said that we would not have no-knock warrants anymore, that man should be held accountable for that young man's death, and he's not. The mayor of Minneapolis gets escaped by after a young man who was asleep in his cousin's apartment. They wasn't even looking for him. He wasn't the one they were looking for. He lost his life because of shady and flat-out dirty police work. And I feel bad for that police officer who was set up to pull the trigger on this young man. I do. I feel bad for them because they should have done their work. They should have been 110% positive that the person that they was looking for was in that apartment. They should have been positive that if they opened that door, that person was there. They were not positive, but they did it anyway. This is the Minneapolis Police Department. They are reckless, and they have always been reckless.
It's not just Minneapolis. I'm pretty sure if we look at police departments all around the country, especially those in Democrat-run cities, you're going to find this exact same behavior. And that brings us to the next point, that these are, in fact, Democrat-run cities, right? And the mayors in these cities are Democrats, and the legislatures, the city councils in these communities, in these cities are Democrats. They are the ones that are in control of this. So they are the ones that pass the regulations that cause the interactions. They are the ones that choose to use the police department as a taxation force. They are responsible for this. The city council and the mayor's office. But every single time we start to have these discussions and conversation, it's always focused on the police. And these people are never held accountable for the damage that their ideology and their policy is doing to the cities. And until we are able to take this conversation bigger than just the police department, but the people that actually give the police department their code, we're not going to solve anything. It's going to consistently be this fight between us and the police when the people who are actually causing the damage continue to go unscathed.
Well, you know what they did. The city council here decided that we're going to blame everything on the police department, everything. So why don't we defund the police? That big narrative that basically came out of 3 people on the city council in Minneapolis, and it spread it like wildfire. And then the woke, progressive, liberal white person got a hold of it, and it blew up. And it started a wave here that I was just shocked that the same black people who wanted to do something different, to get a different type of police force, some of them jumped on board for a second until the crime started really going up. And then everybody pulled back on that, except for the white progressives who did not live in the city, but yet was going into the city during these protests talking about defund the police. And I'm sitting there going, you've got a police department out in your area that is doing the job because you don't have that much crime, so they're sitting at the donut shop all day because they have nothing to do. But yet you come across here and you push this narrative that somebody want to defund the police department, and that's not what people were asking for. People was asking to have mental health professionals. We were asking our police department to do too much. Here in Minnesota, the police department are the ones who are going out to these encampments of homeless people and rousing them up and moving them. The police are doing that. And we're sitting there going, that's not the police job. That should be some other people's job to get these people housing, to put them in places that they should be, or give them a space so they can gather and they can be. But we're asking our police department to go do things like this. We're asking our police department. Oh, speaking of the police department over in St. Paul, a Laotian gentleman just was shot by the police department. He was having a mental situation. He had a knife in his hand. He wouldn't put the knife down, but he was going through some things. So they shot and killed him. These things that we're saying, the police should not be the head of these situations when you have these things going on at all, just like Breonna Taylor.
But see, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that too, especially on the mental health issue, right? Because Democrats don't want us to call anybody crazy. And I'm using that term, but this is how we grew up. Like, our parents would tell us, our elders would be like, Uncle so-and-so is crazy. Like, you need to watch how it is, how you are around them. It didn't mean we ostracized or shut ourselves off, but it meant that it trained us to see certain signs, certain behavior. When we would know that he was going through an episode, when we would see X, Y, or Z happen. So for us growing up, it wasn't that you ignored crazy, it's that you acknowledged it. And you were able to react to it because you acknowledged it. But we have a society now where we're not supposed to look at people and say, like, this person has a mental health issue. This person is not fit to be in society at this moment until they get help. We're not allowed to say that. And they've even come up with terms like an ableist, or, you know what I'm saying? They've invented this new dialogue to prevent us from saying what is reality. And that prevention is what stops us from actually getting these people the real help that they need. And we have to wrap up on this, so I'll give you last word.
No, you are so right in exactly what you just said, because, back in my day, my grandmother would look at us and say, Uncle Terry, he just ain't right. And we understood what he said with everything. But at the end of the day, like, we just got to get to the point to where these Right now, I'm going to call Democrats because they have the trifecta here in Minnesota, and they are pushing some bills that are completely crazy. But the funny part about it is the only bill that we really got here, the black people, Juneteenth. We never asked for Juneteenth to be a holiday. What we asked for is protection of the law. Is what we asked for. We asked for monies to be put into the community. That's what we asked for. But we ain't getting that. But yet the Democrats can come in and buy up all the churches and all the businesses and all of the nonprofits in the city and run things into the ground.
Y'all just gave illegal immigrants licenses, didn't y'all?
Yes, we did.
Mm. So
yes,
I just wanted to throw that in there because I know I just read that as well. So I'm pretty sure you're gonna have zero
Sonnie. It's crazy.
You're gonna have zero issues with voting and other issues coming up in the near future. With that being like, we're gonna have no problem at all. All right, thank you so much, Rev Tim, for coming through. I appreciate you. Fire conversation, and I can't wait for us to do it again. So I hope you come back and chop it up with us.
Anytime you want me, I got to get a hold of your little young brother that you had, that Hotep Jesus dude. I've been following him here lately, and I got to get a hold of him and speak with him also.
Yeah, he's fire. You definitely want to have a conversation with him. Well, thank you so much, Rev, for coming through. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back. If you call in, we'll take your calls. If not, I will jump in, chat about something. We'll be back in just a moment.